Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Confucius Institute at Nanyang Technological University, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. And thank you for your generous support in honoring our book launch ceremony today. Our honorable guest of honor, Mr. Muhammad Fahmi bin Aliman, Mayor of the Southeast District, Grassroots Advisor to Marine Parade GRC, GRO, and MP for Marine Parade GRC. Thank you so much for gracing the event. We are deeply honored to have you joining us here today. Distinguished guests from our local Chinese and Malay literalist circle, such as Mr. Muhammad Rahman Daud and Mr. Liepu, as well as representatives from our mother tongue language education fraternity, Dr. Jocelyn Lim, Madam Sabia Abbas, and Madam Noah Azima of the Ministry of Education, and Dr. Fu Chuanfeng, Director of Singapore Center for Chinese Language. Thank you for your presence. 谢谢您的莅临. And to our longtime friends and associates, Mr. Leong Wen Kam, Mr. Casey Tan, Madam Zhang Xina, Miss He Xuefen, and Mrs. Hong Su Mei, and Mrs. Tan Ang Su Bui. We would also like to express our gratitude for you to be here to support us, as you always have. Last but not least, I would like to thank the National Library Board, represented by Miss Jane Wee, the Chinese Language Division Senior Head at NLB's Collection, Planning and Development Department, and her colleague, Mr. Yang Qingli, for all the invaluable assistance that they have showered us in making this event possible at NLB. This afternoon, we gathered to celebrate the launch of a new publication by CINTU, authored by Professor Liu Suryadinata, a Chinese book entitled Major Malay Poets in Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. 廖建裕教授撰著，新马印马来诗坛泰斗及其作品译介. This is the second book by Professor Liu Suryadinata that we publish. CINTU wishes to thank the author for the privilege of publishing this meaningful book, which we believe will contribute to interracial and intercultural understanding within and beyond Singapore. In regard to the significance of the book and the contribution of the author in this particular area of literary and academic development, I'm going to leave it to Professor Khadijah to enlighten us in her speech later. Who else is more qualified than Prof. Khadijah, the head of Asian Languages and Culture Academic Group of the National Institute of Singapore at NTU to talk on this subject. The primary mission of the Confucius Institute at Nanyang Technological University is to help Singaporeans to enhance our Mandarin capability. An important platform by which we utilize to accomplish this mission is through the publication of quality creative writings in Chinese produced by Singaporean and ASEAN writers. We have so far published about 20 books in this regard. These inspiring books by the best writers in our region have not only contributed in showcasing the beauty of the Chinese language, but also played an important role in promoting mutual understanding among the various communities in Southeast Asia. This new book by Professor Suryadinata is yet another testimony of our effort and commitment. Prof. Liu, thank you for joining us in this journey. Mr. Mayor and all our distinguished guests, I thank you.
That's the speech by Dr. Liu Pingfu. Now we would like to invite the author, Professor Liu Suryadinata, to share with us more about the book. Professor Liu, please.
下面我们邀请本书新马印当代马来诗坛泰斗及其作品译介的作者廖建裕教授为新书发布会致辞。
I'm very delighted to be here today. Before I proceed further, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Dr. Liu Pingfu, Director of the Confucius Institute, NTU, for publishing my book and also have it launched here today. As many of you know, I am a social scientist, but I also love literature. Poetry is my first love. I read poems myself, but I am also very interested in reading and translating Chinese, Malay, and Indonesian poems. Since my student days at Nanyang University, I have started doing the translation works. Through translation, I introduced Chinese literature to the Malay community and Malay and Indonesian literature to the Chinese community. I see myself as a bridge, jembatan, 桥梁, which connects the two communities, the two cultures. However, as this is my hobby rather than my rice ball, when I was busy making a living, I stopped doing this for a while. But after a while, when I am free again, then I continue my literary activities. The book which is being launched today is in the Chinese language. The title is 新马印当代马来诗坛泰斗及其作品译介. Translate, if I roughly translate it into English, is major contemporary Malay poets, their life and works in Chinese translations. Although it's a book in Chinese, but I also include the original poems of each poet in order to show that the beauty of the Malay and Indonesian language. For those who know or read Malay or some Malay, I'm sure that they will appreciate it. The first poet included in this book is Khairil Anwar of Indonesia, who was a talented young man. He produced only 70 odd poems, but many of his poems have become classics. His language has become the poetic language used in modern Indonesian poetry and beyond. His poems address various issues, especially human relationship, love, patriotism, individualism, and humanitarianism. He had a lot of famous lines. I just quote a bit, to share with you. Like, aku ini binatang jalan. I'm a wild beast. Another line, sekali berarti sudah itu mati. To achieve something once and you die. The last one that I would like to quote here is, aku mau hidup 1000 tahun lagi. I would like to live 1,000 more years. Unfortunately, Khairil Anwar did not live long. He died in 1949 when he was 27 years old. A young man to die. The second prominent poet that I introduced in the book is Usman Awang, was from Malaysia. His language at one time was influenced by Khairil Anwar. But unlike Khairil Anwar, his poems carried out strong social messages. He addressed social issues, humanitarianism, patriotism. Of course, he also wrote much about love. Love is the eternal theme for every writer and every poet. Usman Awang sympathized with the little people, the people who were oppressed. He was the voice of the people who encounter oppression. He also addressed racial issues and dedicated his poems not only to the Malays, but also to the Chinese and the Indians. The third poet in the book is Masuri S.N. from Singapore, another giant contemporary Malay literature. His language in his poetry was also influenced by Khairil Anwar. However, unlike Khairil Anwar, Masuri produced more than 1,000 poems covering all issues about life. He addressed patriotism, love, happiness, sorrow, secular life, and toward the end of his life, he became more religious. Masuri, who could have left Singapore and lived in Malaysia, did not do so. He continued to live at this birthplace, Singapore, in his famous poem, Singapura Kotaku, the Singapore, my city. There are two last lines which reads as follows. Mengerti semua kecintaan, buat bumi kota pagutan. I know all my love is for the earth of the city that I have embraced. The fourth poet that I included in the book is by Gusmus, an Indonesian poet, also known as Mustafa history. He is the only poet in this book who is still living. He is an ulama who wrote poems, not only religious poems, but more about social issues and human sufferings. He has a great sense of humor. On top of this, his love has gone beyond religious boundaries. He embraced universal humanism. I enjoy reading his work very much. Please allow me to say a few words in Mandarin. 我这本书收集了新马英当代4大马来诗人的生平和作品。第一个是印尼的天才诗人开利尔安瓦，他是印尼新诗的奠基者，他创造了诗的语言，使印尼诗坛焕然一新。至今还没有人能超越他。在他短短的27年里，他创作了70首诗歌，首首都是经典。他是一个短命的诗人，可能是天才自古遭天妒，不许人见见百头。第二个是马来西亚诗人乌斯曼阿旺，他的语言曾受到开利尔的影响。乌斯曼也是马来西亚很有影响力的诗人，他的诗作感情丰富，常常反映了被压迫者的呼声。他主张种族和谐，对华族以及印度族的深厚的感情经常流露在他的作品里。第三个是新加坡诗人马苏里，他有马来新诗之父的美誉，作品有1000余首。他本来可以移民到马来西亚，但是他深爱着他自己的单身地狮子城这个美丽的土地。上述3大诗人都去世了，在这本书中唯一还健在的是古斯穆斯。他虽然是印尼的回教传教士，却是一位有名的诗人。他的诗作有许多是对人性的批判，对社会的腐败的谴责，而且具有高度的幽默感。更难能可贵的是，他对被压迫者的同情超越了他的宗教。Okay, this time for me to conclude. Saya ingin menggunakan kesempatan ini untuk mengucapkan terima kasih saya yang tidak terhingga kepada para hadirin yang telah datang pada siang hari ini. Ucapan saya yang spesial, yang khas, ingin saya sampaikan kepada tamu kehormatan yang berhormat Bapak Muhammad Fahmi bin Alimin yang telah meluangkan masa untuk hadir pada pelancaran buku saya ini. Terima kasih. Thank you. 谢谢你的莅临。
Thank you, Professor Liu. Coming up, we would like to invite Professor Hadija, Head of Asian Languages and Cultures Academic Group, National Institute of Education, NTU, on stage for a few words. Professor Hadija, please.
感谢廖教授。接下来，让我们邀请南洋理工大学国立教育学院亚洲语言文化学院学部主任哈迪加教授上台致辞。
Mayor Southeast Asia and MP Marine Trade, Mr. Wing Chong, Assistant Director, Confucius Institute, Professor Liu Suryadinata, author of the book, distinguished guests, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and my warm welcome in this special occasion. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Neo Peng Fu and Confucius Institute for the invitation. It is an honor for me to deliver a speech in this special event. Confucius Institute is a close and valued partner of the Asian Languages and Cultures Academic Group, ALC, NIE. ALC has had many collaborative projects with CI to promote cross-cultural studies. I would like to highlight 3 activities which involve cross-cultural studies and understanding that we have collaborated so far. First one is anthology of poem Singapura, Kotaku, Kampung Halamanku with Professor Leo Suryadinata and I as co-editor. This book compiles a diversity of feelings and views, but having similar love for our country from Chinese and Malay poets in Singapore. This book is a testimony of a sense of national identity and unity in diversity in Singapore. So the second activity is the forum on language, forum or dialogue on national identity, bridging cultural boundary through poetry, which was held here on 25th October 2015, quite some time ago, where we discussed about Prof. Leo's book, okay? And then the third activity is the 11th Conference of Asia Pacific Consortium on Teaching Chinese as International Language, which ALC co-hosted in 2019. Okay, I don't know why the sequence of the slides. This is the photo of the dialogue that we had here, okay? From this project, I had the opportunity to work closely with Prof. Leo. Besides that, Prof. Leo participated in the international seminar on Masuri SN, co-organized by NIE, Malay Council, and NLB in 2008. His paper, Karya Masuri SN dalam Masyarakat Tionghoa di Singapura and Malaya, sebuah kajian awal, is very interesting as he provided new insight on how Masuri's poem were translated into Chinese and introduced to Chinese community in 1950s and early 1960s. Okay. The most recent one, sorry, so I got my slide, no, sorry. The most recent one was Prof. Leo's article for the book Yang Terukir, published by Malay Council to commemorate 50th independent Singapore in 2015. I was the head of editorial team of the book, and Prof. Leo's article entitled Golongan Tionghoa dan Persulatan Melayu, the Chinese Group and Malay Literature, provides great insights into the historical and cultural relationship between Chinese and Malays in Singapore and Malaysia in 1950s and 60s, before independence of Malaya and separation of Singapore from Malaysia. He explained the role of NANTA, Nanyang University, and the Ngee College in teaching Malay language and literature in Singapore to Chinese and non-Chinese undergraduates. These two local institutions set up their own Malay language studies department and had produced significant number of graduates in Malay studies. Among the graduates of NANTA are eminent scholars and authors such as Yang Kui, Chan Ma Wo, Liao Yok Fang, Tan Ta Sen, and Prof. Leo himself. This group of Chinese scholars in Malay studies are indeed special generation of Singaporeans who are very significant and unique, as they are the product of special historical era of Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesian history. Their contributions are actually huge and impactful. For example, the late Dr. Liao Yok Fang had taught many students at Nanta and NUS since 1965 until his passing in 2016. I was very privileged to learn from him, as he was my lecturer on classical Malay literature at the University of Singapore in 1970s. 13 years ago, I presented paper on International Conference on Malay Studies in conjunction of 35 years of Malaysia-China diplomatic relationship on 31st May to 3rd June 2009 at Beijing Foreign Studies University, entitled China from Perspective of Munshi Abdullah bin Abdul Qadir, and one of the early pioneers of Singapore. In my paper, I mentioned that there were at least 54 written texts of classical Malay literature which were produced since 1390 BC concerning the Chinese and the relationship between Chinese and Malay world. Among the texts that I discussed were Tajuh Salatin, or Crown of King, Sejarah Melayu, or Malay Annal, Hikayat Hang Tuah, or the Epic of Hang Tuah, and the works of Munshi Abdullah. Based on these three Malay classical literature texts written about 400 years ago, the Chinese was viewed as powerful and cultural identity and played an important part in the process of genesis, construction, and development of Malay civilization. Generally, classical Malay texts, literary texts, such as above, Sejarah Melayu, Tajuh Salatin, and Hikayat Hang Tuah, emphasize the importance of mutual respect and collaboration. Although it is known that text contains specific political motive, cultural and religious messages and ideologies based on the function of various genres of literature, it has been delivered without insulting or belittling the civilization of particular race or country. Indeed, mutual racial respect, harmony were the main message of this classical text. A prominent Chinese scholar, Professor Liang Liji, who taught at the Peking University, did a research and comparative studies between two sources of civilization, record of Chinese history and Malay historical sources, Sejarah Melayu especially. And he found the close and firm ties between the Ming dynasty and the Malaccan kingdom, which have existed for more than a century, and they share a glorious history. Both parties share the same determination to foster friendship and love, and both parties are able to respect and appreciate each other. That's according to this eminent scholar, Professor Liang. Cultural study is an urgent area of concern, particularly now when we are in the new digital age, the fast-changing interlinked global world. Chinese and Malay communities have a long peaceful history of harmonious life together, particularly before the arrival of Western civilization, Western colonialization. Under Western colonialization, our life have divided, ruled and shaped by their divide rules and policies. Unfortunately, there are still so many things that we do not know of each other because of the continuation of the colonial legacies and the lack of cross-cultural communication and studies. Hence, we must make concerted effort to learn, to know, to understand, to respect each other, and live together in harmony. Ladies and gentlemen, Prof. Leo has made significant contribution in the development of cross-cultural study. From all those collaborative works between CI and ALC, I get to know Prof. Leo better and appreciate his deep knowledge, scholarship, great skill, and great contribution in cross-cultural study. He is indeed prominent scholar in sinology and Malay studies. Compared to other Chinese scholars in Malay studies, Prof. Leo has great love in poetry. Prof. Leo is poet and translator of Malay poems into Chinese. He's already explained that. He has written poetry book in Malay, Jejak Kaki dan Lagu Hati in 1986, published by Pustaka Nasional, and has translated poems of major Malay, Indonesian poets into Chinese and published into book, such as Anthology of Poem by Osman Awang in 2006 and poem by Masuri S.N. in 2012. Professor Leo is indeed a holistic and creative scholar who has made significant contribution in cross-cultural studies between two cultures and civilization, Malay and Chinese. And his latest book today, which is launched today, is just an icing on his cross-cultural studies cake. My heartiest congratulations to Prof. Leo for the launch of your new book. Okay, tahniah Pak. Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. Leo, for your dedication and great contribution in building strong cultural bridge for us in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, China, and global overseas Chinese and Malay communities. You have been great lover of Malay literature, champion of cross-cultural studies, multicultural icon, and a truly inspiration for us and the future generation. I salute you, Pak Leo Suradinata. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to continue to develop intercultural and civilizational studies using multiple or cross-disciplinary approach to achieve greater cultural knowledge and understanding. Okay. ALC aspire to be the cultural architect and builder, and we aim to strengthen this in NIE, making it a truly distinguished multicultural institution, builder for future multilingual cultural educators and scholars for Singapore and beyond, and to be the center of excellence for Asian languages and cultural studies. Okay. Our motto is, as one ALC, we take keen interest in one another's culture, preserve and deepen our respective cultures. We hope to continue working with CI to achieve our cultural vision and mission. We also welcome any collaboration with external parties to encourage learning and deepening our respective cultures. The cultural exploration and initiative done by Prof. Leo must be supported and continued with further strategic effort. Actually, Prof. Leo has expressed his hope in his earlier papers, and I would like to highlight them. Okay? His hope, first hope, to study, select, translate, and produce anthology of poem by Masuri S.N. into Chinese to enable Chinese readers to have deep knowledge on Masuri S.N. and Malay literature in general. Second, to develop a new generation of Chinese who are interested and continue the efforts made by all generation of Chinese to develop Malay language and literature. Ladies and gentlemen, this hope of Prof. Leo were expressed in 2008 and 2015. Okay. Let us show our support to him through expression of our appreciation and gratefulness. We should do something together to enable him to fulfill his noble dreams. Let us start reflecting on it. Perhaps Mr. Fahmi, our GOH, can do something to facilitate this at grassroots or national level. If you do, we'll support you. Okay. May the launch of the new book today bring forth new course of action, enabling the new generation of Singaporeans to continue the meaningful journey for deeper intercultural understanding to achieve one of the multicultural dream of Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Khadijah. Now we are very honored to invite our guest of honor, Mr. Muhammad Fahmi bin Aliman, Mayor of Southeast District and MP for Marine Parade GRC on stage. Mayor, sir, please.
感谢哈迪加教授。现在我们隆重地邀请今天大会的主宾及东南区市长马林百列集选区议员穆罕默法米宾阿里曼先生为今天的发布会致辞。大家掌声有请。
On my way up here, I was talking to Win Chong and Wilson. That, this is like almost my first few time that I come to National Library. So because when he was at the old location and we were all studying that time, I spent a lot of time there. But now when we shifted here, I've rarely come to this place. So again, I wanted to say thank you to ALC, LB, and maybe the Chinese Institute from NTU for providing this opportunity for me to come back here and and meet and take a look at this place. So again, thank you so much. So good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon to Bapak Prof. Leo Surya Dinata, Associate Professor Ibu Khadijah, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So again, good afternoon. I'm very pleased to join all of you at today's launch of major Malay poets in Singapore, Malaysia and Indonesia. A book written in Chinese by Professor Leo Surya Dinata. The book documents the accomplishments of 4 literary giants of Malay literature, namely Indonesian poets Mr. Khairul Anwar and Gus Mus, a Malaysian poet Mr. Usman Awang, and Singaporean poet Mr. Mansuri bin Salikun, or famously known as Mansuri SN. The translation of these beautiful and significant Malay poems into Mandarin allows the Chinese community to be introduced to the representative works by the 4 major Malay poets. Such cross-cultural interactions between Malay and Chinese literary works are to be applauded, and I deeply appreciate the efforts by organizations such as the Confucius Institute in promoting greater awareness of different cultures among the Chinese community. I believe that the significance of the book lies not only in enabling readers of the Chinese community in Singapore to appreciate the creative composition of their fellow Malay friends. It also allows more people in this region and beyond to better understand Malay literature and the historical and cultural development in modern and contemporary Southeast Asia. Singapore's own Mansuri bin Salikun, or Mansuri SN, is widely recognized as a titan of modern Malay poetry and doyen of the Malay literary scene of Singapore, having written over 1,000 poems in his lifetime. Although Mr. Mansuri passed away in 2005, his influence and impact on Singapore's Malay literature continues to be felt today. Thanks to Professor Leo Surya Dinata, more people will be able to know about Mr. Mansuri's accomplishments and appreciate the prominent position he occupies in the world of contemporary Malay literature. Professor Surya Dinata himself has a distinguished career in academia. He is presently a visiting senior fellow of ISES Yusof Ishak Institute and adjunct professor of the of the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at NTU. He is also a famous Chinese poet who has been introducing Malay literature to the Chinese community here in Singapore since the 1950s. I congratulate Professor Surya Dinata for the publication of this new book, and also like to commend Confucius Institute of Nanyang Technological University for publishing this inspiring book, which I believe will play an important role in promoting inter-ethnic and intercultural understanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. Please stay on stage for the most distinguished moment, the launch of the book, Major Malay Poets in Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. May I invite also Professor Liu and Professor Hadijah to join us on stage for the grand launch ceremony.
谢谢市长先生，我们请市长先留步为我们来做新书的揭开这个红幕的仪式。我们也邀请本书的作者廖建裕教授、哈迪加教授一起上台为我们揭幕。再一次感谢贵宾，我们现在集体合影留念。好，再次感谢各位。
Meanwhile, all guests present today will also receive a copy of the new book, which our staff will hand over to you right now. Thank you very much. Coming up next, we are pleased to invite students of NIE, Asian Languages and Cultures on stage to perform a poetry recital.
接下来呢，我们将由南洋理工大学国立教育学院亚洲语言文化学部的同学们为我们来表演诗集中部分作品的朗诵。
First, please welcome Sabarina and Neo Keng Yang as they recite Dipo Negoro by Khairi Anwar. Please turn to page 23 of the book.
首先将由我们的同学沙巴丽娜和梁庆阳来朗读本书中凯里尔的作品《蒂博尼哥罗》，在本书的第23页。
Dipo Negoro oleh Khairi Anwar. Di masa pembangunan ini, Tuan hidup kembali dan bara kagum menjadi api. Di depan sekali Tuan menanti, tak gentar, lawan banyaknya 100 kali. Pedang di kanan, keris di kiri. Berselimpang semangat yang tak bisa mati. Maju. Ini barisan tak bergenderang berpaling. Kepercayaan tanda menyeru. Sekali bererti, sudah itu mati. Maju. Bagimu negeri. Menyediakan api. Punah di atas menghamba. Binasa di atas ditundas. Sesungguhnya jalan ajal baru tercapai. Jika hidup harus merasai. Maju. Serbu, serang, terjang.
凯里尔，蒂博尼哥罗，在这建设的时代里，你又复活了。惊骇的死灰燃起了火，你站在最前线，即使敌人多100倍，也毫无畏惧。右手一把剑，左手一柄匕首， 不死的精神洋溢着心间。前进，这是一个没有战鼓、没有锤鼓的队伍。信念就是冲锋陷阵的标志。一次有意义，之后就死去。前进，国家为你准备了一把火。与其当奴隶，不如死亡；与其被蹂躏，不如消亡。虽然只有通过死亡后才能获取，但是活着时就应该能够体会。前进，进攻，冲锋，撞击。
Next, Sabarina and King Yang will recite Di Negeri Amplop by Gusmus on page 77 of the book.
接下来还是由傻巴琳娜和庆阳为我们朗读古诗穆斯的《在信封之国》，在本书的第77页。
Di Negeri Amplop oleh Gusmus. Di Negeri Amplop, Aladin menyembunyikan lampu wasiatnya. Malu. Samson tersipu-sipu. Rambut keramatnya ditutupi topi. Rapi-rapi. David Copperfield dan Houdini bersembunyi, rendah diri. Entah, andai kata Nabi Musa bersedia datang membawa tongkatnya. Amplop-amplop di negeri amplop, mengatur dengan teratur. Hal-hal yang tak teratur menjadi teratur. Hal-hal yang teratur menjadi tak teratur. Memutuskan putusan yang tak putus, membatalkan putusan yang sudah putus. Amplop-amplop menguasai penguasa dan mengendalikan orang-orang biasa. Amplop-amplop membeberkan dan menyembunyikan, mencairkan dan membekukan, mengganjal dan melicinkan. Orang bicara bisa bisu, orang mendengar bisa tuli. Orang alim bisa nafsu, orang sakti bisa mati. Di negeri amplop, amplop-amplop mengamplopi apa saja dan siapa saja.
古寺穆斯在信封之国，在信封之国，因为害羞，阿拉丁将他的神灯藏起来。三逊也感到害羞，用帽子将自己的神法整齐地掩盖。大卫科伯菲和侯丁尼也感到自卑而躲藏起来。不知道圣人穆沙是否愿意带着他的拐杖到访。在信封之国，由信封掌管一切事物，将乱糟糟的事情变得井井有条，将已经有条理的事情变得乱糟糟，将不能解决的案件解决了，也将已经解决的案件给推翻掉。无数的信封控制了掌权者，也控制了平民百姓。信封展现出丑恶的，也将丑恶的隐藏起来。信封将已经该凝固的融掉，也将已经融掉的凝固起来。信封能阻挠，也能推进。信封导致能讲话的人变成哑巴，能听的人变成聋子，禁欲的人欲火焚身，圣人也会即刻死亡。在信封之国，无数的信封会侵入任何事情上，任何人身上。
Now, Sabarina and Jermaine Wong will recite Bahasa Bunda by Usman Awang on page 136 of the book.
接下来由 Sabarina 和黄雪莹同学为大家朗读乌斯曼的母语，在本书的136页。
Bahasa Bunda oleh Usman Awang. Tersusun indah menjadi madah, jauh mengimbau, menjangkau pulau. Ayun beralun, lembut membuai, jauh meresap, mendekat damai. Ada ketika marak menyala, memercik api semangat bangsa. Meletus gemuruh, menyadap segala, menjadi alat perjuangan merdeka. 1000 tingkah membawa lagu, mainan gadis diusik rindu. Senjata teruna menawan cinta, pusaka rakyat pendukung budaya. 1000 bahasa kita bicara, manakan sama bahasa bunda.
乌斯曼阿旺母语组成了美丽的诗章，传送到那遥远的岛上，柔和的像催眠曲一样，心底的感觉既平和又安详。有个时候，野火燎原，点燃起民族精神的火焰，一声巨响，摧毁了一切，变成了独立战争中的枪械。千变万化的美好歌曲，少女们相思时的玩意，少男们征服爱情的武器，人民的文化遗产由它来承继。我们讲1000种言语，怎能比得上一个母语？
Sabarina and Jermaine will now recite Penjual Air Batu by Usman Awang on page 142 of the book.
接下来 Sabarina 和雪莹将为我们朗读乌斯曼的卖冰的小贩，在本书的142页。
Penjual air batu oleh Usman Awang. Pelan-pelan di pinggir jalan kota, penjual air batu suaranya ditelan deru kereta. Ia bisa ditulikan dengan pekikan hon-hon. Tuan-tuan yang terganggu bisa pula menghamun. Undang-undang ialah suatu kekuasaan yang biasanya untuk orang-orang bawahan. Dan bersiraklah orang-orang pakaian seragam, memburu tangkapan yang melanggar aturan. Anak-anak di bawah kolong, perutnya kosong. Ayah belum pulang. Manakah dia? Isteri menanti dengan hati separuh bingung. Tunggulah betapa ia pulang jua. Sampai gelap merangkak menghampiri, penjual air batu belum pulang lagi. Tapi berapa kali tangkapan terjadi? Ia usahakan untuk berjual mencari rezeki. Bilakah ruang keadilan memberi isi? Para penjaja dalam hayatnya wajah berseri. Bila nanti undang-undang jadi perlindungan, semua manusia tanpa kasta menerima keadilan.
乌斯曼阿旺，卖冰的小贩。卖冰的小贩在城里大街旁慢慢推车，嘈杂的车声掩盖了他的叫卖声，车笛声能够把他震到耳聋。手阻挡的大人也会发出辱骂声。法律和条规是一种权利，平常是为底层人民而制定的。 穿制服的人员随时都会出现，追捕那些违反法规的人。在高脚屋下的孩子们空着肚子，爸爸还没有回来，他去了哪里？妻子也在等待，心中有些迷惑。等吧，他会回来的。直到夜幕低垂的时候，那边的小贩仍旧没有回来。他已经被抓了好几次，但是为了生活，他不能停止当小贩。什么时候真理才能伸张？小贩们在生活中会有笑颜。什么时候法律才能维护？世上所有的人，不分出生，一视同仁。
Now, Sabarina, King Yang, and Jermaine will recite Nyaku by Masuri on page 200.
现在，沙巴丽娜、庆阳和雪莹将为我们朗读马苏里的《我的愿望》，在本书的第200页。
Niatku oleh Masuri S.N. Amboi, semarak tanah airku, indah permai gilang gemilang, tanah tempat tumpah darahku, kemana pergi tetap terbayang. Datang niatan di dalam jiwa, sedia berkorban untuk ibunda, menyumbang bakti, menyerah dharma sebagai putera ke semua bangsa. Bukan harta yang ku pinta, tidak pangkat yang ku cari, hanya ikhlasku mulia semata, guna mengabdi untuk negeri.
Mas,
Niatku terang, nyata terserlah, tiada peduli halang rintangan. Tanah ibunda tetap ku papah, walau jiwa bercerai badan.
马苏里，我的愿望啊！我崇高的祖国，闪耀着美丽无比的光芒。你呀，是我热爱的家乡，不论在何处，我都不能把你遗忘。
我心中有一个愿望，准备为您，我的亲娘，献出我的忠心，履行我的义务，当一个民族之花的男儿。
我不祈求后路，也不贪图高官，我只有耿耿的忠心，为国家服务，一心一意。
我的愿望光明正大，不管眼前有多大的阻力，我仍会维护母亲的土地，哪怕要我献出我的生命。
Lastly, Sabarina, King Yang, and Jermaine will recite Kota Singaku by Masuri on page 219 of the book.
最后，萨巴丽娜、庆阳和雪莹将为我们朗读马苏里的《狮子城》，在本书的第219页。
Kota Singaku oleh Masuri S.N. Dilahirkan aku satu waktu menjenguk tentu, mengetuk pintu buat lalu lalang pilu. Keluarku, keluar bicara baru. Sukmaku pernah menyentuh dada deru. Apa yang memikat atau apa yang kupikat, di hatiku aku terikat, di kotaku aku terlekat. Setahu yang ku serap, mengenal bintang malap, ayahku begitu kerap mendoa memohon harap. Dalam detik dera meraja, sukmaku bicara saja. Bangun dari puing siksa, di kotaku aku selama. Belum seumurku meruntuhi pribadi. Keluar dari diriku, mencegat nikmat mimpi. Karena mimpiku ialah hidupku. Yang dalam hidupku menjadi mimpiku. Menjadi darah duniaku. Pohon dahan, pasir peri, ombak lautan. Demi iman bahawa kasihmu tak pernah kusangsikan. Kepekatan memadat tidak lagi kucairkan. Mengerti semua kecintaan buat bumi kota pagutan.
马苏里，我的狮子城，我诞生在这里，有一天我一定去，敲开房门，让心痛溜出去。
我出来，讲出新的话题。我的生命曾经触动那充满怒吼的胸膛。
到底是什么吸引着我？或者我吸引了什么？我已绑在自己的心中，我已黏在我自己的城里。
我只知道，我遇到了那似曾相识的暗淡的星辰。我父亲从不间断的祈祷、祈求希望。
当草声四起，我的灵魂在说话，从那折磨的废墟中觉醒。我永远就留在这狮子城里。
这一生没有完全摧毁我的人格。我若从梦中走出来，再也不能留在温柔乡里。
因为我的梦就是我的生活，我的生活又变成了我的梦，变成了我的世界里的血肉。
树枝与树干，沙滩与海浪，我向上天发誓，我从未怀疑过你的爱。既然愿意，再也淡化不了。我知道，我所有的爱，献给了我深爱的土地与城市。
Thank you, Sabrina, King Yang, and Jermaine for the wonderful performance.
再次感谢三位同学声情并茂的双语朗诵。
Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this ceremony. Thank you very much for participation. I understand that some of you may want a signature from our author, Professor Liu, but please keep the safe distancing, okay? And please queue up. Okay, thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you very much.
再次感谢各位来宾在特殊的时期参加我们的活动。